Coming up on Chasing the Natty, everybody loves sleepers this time of year, but the sharper edge is figuring out where the room is already making mistakes. Today we're looking at early ADP trends, where the market is overpaying, where the value is still sitting, and how to build better teams before these rooms tighten up. We got Nate Marchese with us tonight. Let's get it rolling.
Looking to throw. Caught. Tony off and running. He doesn't lose foot races. Touchdown Miami.
Jackson throwing to the end zone. What a night, Bo Sparks. Make it 4.
Shakes through a couple of tacklers. Still on his feet. Hawkins to the end zone. Unbelievable.
This is Chasing the Natty, a college fantasy football podcast.
All right, welcome in everyone. This is Chris Battistel, co-host of the Chasing the Natty podcast. I hope you guys are having a wonderful ride to your work on this Monday morning. We are the College Fantasy Football Podcast on the Campus to Canton Podcast Network. You can find us on all your podcast feeds and on YouTube every Monday morning during the season. You can find us at 6 a.m. If you want to support the great work we are doing, head over to campustocanton.com and subscribe there to any of our phenomenal tiers. We have content ranging to all sorts of college football games, whether it's CFF, Devi, C2C, college IDP, college DFS. If you've played it, we got content, tools, rankings, and everything you need to succeed. In fact, now, if you want to support the show even further, make sure when you sign up for one of our yearly membership tiers, you use the promo code NATTY, that's NATTY, to get 10% off your yearly membership. Again, promo code NATTY, NATTY. If you can't do that, you can show us some love by leaving a like, comment, and subscribe on the YouTube side of things. And on the podcast side of things, leave a 5-star review and make sure you're following the show. Not only does that show us support, but also the game of college fantasy football in general. If you have any further questions or just want to get in touch for whatever reason, you can find me on the show and on Twitter. I am at FF Crispy. I almost said Jared's handle there. You can find Jared at CFF_Jared. And the show is at Chasing the Natty. And with me tonight, I got the great Nate Marchese. Nate, welcome to the show. Or should I say welcome back to the show. Either way, it's nice to have you, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad I could make it work to fill in here for Jared while he's out for this particular episode. So looking forward to crunching some numbers here on some ADP. Yeah, man, it's great. March Madness is coming up, so it's nice to take a little break from some college basketball and dive into the ADP side of things here with some college fantasy.
Yes, sir. Who's your college basketball team? Who's your take to win it all? Is it Duke this year?
I honestly haven't looked at the brackets. I'm still getting over the fact that my Sooners once again finished as the first team out of the tournament.
Oh,
so,
no.
I'm kind of used to living on the bubble here with Porter Moser this time of year, but I don't know. I think there's a few teams that I like, but obviously Duke's really good. Arizona, they're fun to watch. So
yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to dive into the brackets once I get a chance to really look at it.
It is bracket season. I'm looking forward to filling one out and trying to kind of predict who's going to take this whole thing. My early pick is Duke right now, but I mean, in this win or go home kind of scenario with this college basketball tournament, man, it can be anybody's game.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch, man. I actually take off every year the first 2 days of March Madness.
Nice.
So Thursday and Friday of coming up this week for the first round of March Madness. I mean, like I enjoy college basketball. I'm not nearly a diehard with hoops like I am football, but I don't know, man. Something about the tournament. I love to just veg out in front of the TV for 2 days and not have to worry about anything else, and just have some fun watching all the craziness of March Madness.
I love it. I love it. Well, good luck. All the best to you and your bracket this bracket season, Nate.
Thanks, man.
We're going to be talking about on this episode of Chasing the Natty. We're going to be talking about some of the what we're trying to figure out with early ADP, where we can pinpoint early advantages and disadvantages across the whole state of college fantasy football drafting. So before we do that, let's hit the ads.
Hey guys, Austin here to talk for a brief moment about Home Field Apparel, the best place to snag clothing for all my favorite schools and teams. Whether it's tees, sweatshirts, hats, joggers, or pretty much anything in between, Home Field Apparel has retro designs with a modern twist to satisfy fans from Ohio State to Drexel to Colorado School of the Mines. Plus, it's some of the comfiest clothing that I own. Use our promo code Campus2Canton, that's Campus the number 2 Canton at checkout for 15% off your first purchase. What's up, guys? Austin here again to let you know about our partnership with Fast Draft, a best ball and DFS platform that hosts a ton of different contests. With the season over and season-long CFF best ball behind us, I know I'm looking for new contests that can scratch my drafting itch, and I think I have found just the thing. Fast Draft has a rookie-only contest called Origins. Each draft has 8 teams in it and is 6 rounds long. And as I've mentioned earlier, you only draft incoming 2026 rookies. I know I plan on max entering this thing, and I think it's going to be a ton of fun. So head on over to Fast Draft, and when you sign up, use code C2C, that's C2C, for a deposit match up to $50. Happy drafting.
Welcome back, everybody. Make sure you check both of those out. We're going to dive into the first segment here. And that's pretty much, we're going to try to identify what early ADP gets wrong. If you're listening to this on the podcast side, head over to the YouTube and you can get a visual of what the early ADP really looks like. We got a bunch of QBs on there, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and I believe we got the first 4 rounds of what the trends are, at least drafting in March and February. So this is thankful to all the people that do decide to draft this time of year. It takes a certain kind of person to want to draft college fantasy football drafts in March and in April and February with so much of the unknown of what we got going on, Nate. What has been your first? Have you drafted at all really much this season, and what has been really your first little hint of what early ADP is kind of getting wrong this early?
No, I have not drafted yet. I'm one of those people that usually kind of waits until after a lot of the spring kind of takes place, and then I start to jump into some best balls.
Yep.
I'm just a casual observer that's obviously very interested to find out where some of these guys are going. And it's awesome to be able to have this much information this early. When you get ADP like this, we're all at this point just, these are all dart throws, really.
Yeah.
A lot of this is going to change over the next few months once information starts coming out from the spring. And then more information is going to change as we approach the actual season. So we're a long ways away still, but what we look at right now is just almost like the cumulative effects of a lot of different people in CFF that are very entrenched in researching what's going on. It's really just kind of a culmination of all of their thoughts and opinions to be able to put together this ADP. So it's nice as far as like my initial thoughts. Same thing we kind of looked at that a lot of us spoke about whenever we did the way too early mock draft. I mean, QB is so like stacked this year. It's really, really impressive just how stacked QB is. And because of that, I think you're seeing the early effects of some of these QBs being pushed down the draft board just a little bit as people are trying to scoop up as many running backs and wide receivers as they can early on.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll touch a bit more on that with the quarterbacks a little bit later into the episode. And I agree with you, man. You can really set yourself up right, even if you're just drafting an early anchor QB and waiting on that position a little further down your drafts with how at least early these drafts are shaken out. And you could walk away with possibly three quarterback ones, three top 10, top 12 quarterbacks on your roster by maybe drafting one in the first 3 rounds and then not touching the position until like round 9 or 10, 11 in the middle parts of your draft. So there's a lot of value there with the quarterbacks. I just wanted to touch on one of the things that I believe, a couple of things that I believe early ADP is getting wrong, and I wanted to touch on a certain situation, and it's the transfer hype with the assumed role. We all like the transfer players moving around and the effects it does have on fantasy football, but one of the trends that I like to, or at least that we can pinpoint early, is the market is treating Dorian Thomas like the clear answer at Cal, but Mason Minnie looks a lot more live than what the ADP suggests. Thomas is going around tight end 7. Mason Minnie is being drafted as tight end 28 from what we see here. And the gap is too wide for a situation that still looks a little uncertain. Thomas is getting the transfer bump and the assumed role boost based on what he was able to do last year at New Mexico. But his New Mexico usage was not overly aggressive when it came to passing the ball downfield. 67% of his targets came below the 6, and 31.5% of those came behind the line of scrimmage. So a big chunk of his profile came on those schemed and lower depth touches. Minnie also worked underneath a lot. About 70% of his usage came below the first down line, but Minnie did not disappear in the Cal offense last year. He ran more snaps from the slot than any other alignment. He ran more snaps than the slot than Dorian Thomas did last year. It was not a huge margin over the inline usage, but it was still meaningful. That still gives him some formation versatility at Cal. If Jordan Somerville, the new OC, moves this offense into what we believe is going to be a more pro-style offense, that does not automatically favor Dorian Thomas in this situation. A pro-style tight end can still be a player who moves around, works underneath, and gives the QB some easy answers. And Minnie might actually be the one who's a cleaner fit for that role, more than what the market is assuming with Dorian Thomas. This situation and this targeting the discrepancy in ADP. It's less about fading Dorian Thomas and more about just questioning the price difference between the two. The tight end 7 assumes a level of separation from Mason Minnie that has not really been proven yet. So the ADP gap is wide and a little bit too aggressive to me. Nate, do you have a take on this Cal tight end room? Is there one that you're willing to invest in more than the other?
I'm really just trying to figure out Cal as
As a
a
whole?
whole altogether.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, they brought in so many weapons, obviously with Thomas, the transfer from Ohio, Ian Strong over from Rutgers. Technically, we still don't even know what the situation is with Jacob DeJesus. He's technically done, but actually he's still in the court process of finding out if his career is actually over or if he's going to get another year because of the Pavia JUCO rule. But yeah, so and then add in the fact that it's a new coaching staff and a new OC and everything else that goes with that. What I do find interesting is I just kind of quickly browse through what the tight end situation looked like last year. Interestingly enough, transfer tight ends were very, very successful. Like first year transfer, like Tanner Koziel, top 3.
Yeah.
It's his first year at Houston. Terrence Carter,
Yeah.
Brody Foley. Let's see, Dylan Wade, Carson Ryan. These are all guys that finished like in the top 15 for tight ends. Some of these, very high, and it was their first year in the system. And some of them, I mean, these are transfer tight ends that were, a year removed from being a transfer, but they were still transfers. Guys like Stowers and Trigg
Yep.
and Jolie and guys like that. So I don't know. Tight end just looks like maybe it's one of those positions you can be a little less hesitant when it comes to somebody that's new to the program. But at the same time, I'm with you. It does seem like that gap between Thomas and Minnie is pretty large for two guys that you would think are probably going to have pretty comparable stats.
Yep.
If one of them gets hurt, obviously one could shoot up, but at the same time, they're going to have other weapons. How much is Cal really going to be throwing the ball to where two wide receivers and two tight ends and Adam Muhammad? Like, are we expecting Cal to be a top 5 offense? Like, that's kind of what we're drafting at right now, to be honest.
Yeah. I agree. And it's a great point with the transfer tight ends. Like you mentioned, with Koziol and those guys there, but did those guys have a Mason Mini as sharing the room with them, right? So that's where the price tag of Dorian Thomas at tight end 7 just seems way too aggressive, at least at this moment, especially considering his counterpart in Mason Mini is being drafted as tight end 28. The value that you're getting with Mason Mini over the ceiling you're buying with Dorian Thomas, you're almost buying Dorian Thomas with the thought that Mason Mini isn't there, buying him at that price at tight end 7.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're basically buying Dorian Thomas at the price, expecting him to produce the exact same stats that he did last year. Whenever he was in the G5, whenever he turned out to be one of the very few options on that team. I mean, that's just, there's not a whole lot of scenarios that play out where that is the case this year. So yeah, I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, so that's a situation if you're drafting early, at least what ADP is telling us right now, that you could take advantage of by either waiting and taking possibly Mason Mini if you want a piece of that Cal tight end room, and then just not overly investing in a player like Dorian Thomas with the price he's going at. Another situation I wanted to talk about of where we think, or kind of think, where early ADP gets it wrong, and it's drafting mobile QBs at their ceiling. And one of them I wanted to point out was Utah quarterback Devin Dampier at QB4. Feels like the market drafting the mobile QB ceiling without asking enough questions about how new offensive coordinator Kevin McGivern will actually use him in this offense, Nate. Dampier is being priced like Utah will fully preserve the New Mexico fantasy version, or even possibly the version that he was last year at Utah. This is a big assumption at QB4. The rushing is why we're all buying into Devin Dampier. He ran for 1,184 yards, 19 TDs in 2024, and then 733 yards and 7 TDs in 2025. But McGivern's history here, it gives you at least some reason to question whether that type of rushing load should be assumed going into 2026. During his time as the offensive coordinator at San Jose State from 2018 to 2023, the QB averaged just 54 rush attempts. No QB under him went for over 100 carries in that span. Then last year at Utah State, Bryson Barnes rushed for 144 attempts. So now the question is simple, Nate. Was that a one-year personnel-driven adjustment with Bryson Barnes, or is that what McGivern wants this offense to be at Utah? That matters because early ADP, at least right now, is treating the Barnes usage like the baseline for what we're expecting Dampier to be at Utah, and that just might be a little bit too aggressive. McGivern has shown more than one version of how he's willing to run an offense. If Utah takes a more balanced approach in 2026, Dampier can still be productive but a more balanced version is what I'm expecting him to be in this season. And the issue with drafting mobile QBs at the ceiling is the market sees the rushing upside and prices the best case version before proving that role will fully transfer. Are you positioning? I don't know where you are in your process of putting together some kind of rankings, Nate. But are you positioning Devin Dampier to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback going into 2026?
Yeah, it didn't take us long. We didn't get very far into this episode before we came to a serious disagreement here.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, so I haven't put together my rankings yet, but I will just say the only quarterback I would for sure take ahead of Devin Dampier would be Brad Jackson. I do believe
Okay.
if I were to put together a P4 rankings, Devin Dampier would be my QB1. Yeah, I mean, I honestly like the Kevin McGibbon thing doesn't give me as much pause because he was very successful with Bryson Barnes
He
last
was,
year.
yeah. Yeah.
And Devin Dampier is somebody that I mean, this is this is a senior. This is a guy that
Yep.
I don't have any question marks about his ability. I think my biggest concern is okay. That was one of, if not the nation's best offensive line last year, and they are losing, I believe, all 5 starters from that offensive line, so that's concerning. And then two, what's going to be the situation with who he's throwing the ball to?
Yeah, that's
They
huge,
they
too.
don't really, they've lost a couple of their top pass catchers to graduation, some of it to Michigan, so. How explosive is that offense going to be under a new OC, along with a new offensive line and new playmakers there on the outside for him? But I mean, when it comes to running quarterbacks, man, I'm all in. That's really the only players that I tend to draft.
That's fair.
So
That's fair.
so yeah, I don't hate his ADP at QB4. There's some other guys definitely down here. I mean, I'll say this, like, I'll just go ahead and throw it out there. That's kind of going in the same range as Devin Dampier. Drew Mestemaker being taken ahead of him as somebody that is transferring up from North Texas to Oklahoma State.
Yep.
I'm not getting any Drew Mestemaker if that's the range that he's going in. If he's going as a top 3 quarterback, and he's actually going a full round basically ahead of Devin
Before
Dampier.
Dampier, yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably out on that. And there's been some things even early on in spring practices. Oklahoma State's a week into it, and oh my gosh, what is Morris? Isn't that yeah,
Yeah,
Eric Morris
yeah.
is the coach that came over from North Texas. So it's his own quarterback. And even Eric Morris has said, hey, I think so far through the first week of practice, Drew's having a little bit of tough time trying to catch up to the game speed of what it's like playing against Power 4 defenses right now.
Yep.
And he made it sound like he thinks he will, but like that's a big jump for a guy that literally didn't play high school football as a quarterback and was a walk-on quarterback at North Texas. In the 2 games he played against decent defenses last year, towards the end of the season, Drew Mestemaker was awful. I mean, awful. So I don't know. Taking him QB3 just seems like a lot of risk.
Yeah,
That I don't think you get with somebody like Devin Dampier because he's proven it at this level.
Yep. Yeah, and you made a great point. The fact that we don't know what the wide receiver room at Utah is going to look like, that might open up more opportunity for Dampier to run. So I like the little pushback there, Nate. And I agree with you on Mestemaker. Go ahead.
I was going to say the Bird Ficklin thing's also a little bit of a concern too for Devin Dampier, right?
Sure.
Like Bird Ficklin
Yep.
proved that he was good enough to where Utah was putting together a package for him.
Mm-hmm.
How much of an impact does Bird Ficklin have? Like if they say, hey, we're bringing him back, but we're going to redshirt him and we're not really going to play Bird much, then I think it's wheels up for Dampier. But if they're like, hey, we're going to put in these like goal line packages for Bird Ficklin because he's such an incredible athlete, then yeah, I mean that could definitely put a hamper on Dampier's rushing upside.
Yeah, and this is like one of the things I love about college fantasy football over like NFL fantasy football is the constant changeover, and the fact that we have a guy like Drew Messemaker moving up in play, in competitive play, and he's still being drafted like the player that he was able to produce last season, and that just
Right.
most likely is not going to be the case. So you can't put too much weight into what he was doing just last year, because this year, I mean, being drafted as QB3 and the usage of his legs alone it's not as much as some of the guys going behind him, like Devin Dampier, Byron Brown, Brendan Sorsby, and Connor Wegman are four quarterbacks that are going after Messemaker that we've been able to identify as dual threat quarterbacks that are going to produce at a much higher level than what Drew Messemaker is going to be able to do this year. So I love that call out with Drew Messemaker there. That's another spot where early ADP gets it wrong by banking too much on what previous production was, especially with transfer players moving up in competition and with the lack of experience, like you mentioned, with Drew Messemaker there, Nate.
Yeah, we've got two of the top 5 quarterbacks in the early ADP that are both transferring up from the G5 to to the P4. One, Byron Brown's going all the way up to the SEC.
Yep.
So this year, I think as we see this blueprint being laid out from Alex Golesh and Eric Morris and a few other of these coaches that are moving up to the next level and basically saying, hey, all you guys that were super productive for me at the G5 level, let's do it. Let's run it back, but let's do it here at the next level. Like, I think this year is going to tell us a lot on how much can we trust that to be the case, because we're going to start to see a lot of that, these coaches taking all their best players with them.
Yep.
And like how much moving forward next year is Messemaker and Byron Brown and some of these other guys going to be a lesson for us that it was a mistake, or us allowing us to say, hey, no, we're good. It's the same system. They can translate.
Yeah, this is a trend we can trust. This is a trend that we got right with ADP last year by trusting that. Great point. One of the final things we want to touch on of what early ADP gets wrong is ambiguous running back rooms treated like solved rooms. And one of those running backs, at least early, is Cameron Dickey at RB9. Just feels too aggressive for a back with this many usage threats around him. There's just too much working against him to live up to that RB9 billing. Jacoby Williams still in the fold. Williams handled over 100 carries last year. He also did more in the receiving game. We get Quentin Joyner coming back from injury, another threat to the workload. So this already looks like a backfield where Dickey may not get the type of volume his ADP is assuming. Then you add in quarterback Brendan Sorsby, a quarterback that is coming off 101 carry season, and that matters because mobile quarterbacks do not just take carries away, they also cut into goal line equity, and that is a big deal when you're drafting a running back as potentially your running back one. Morton last year was not really used as a dual threat quarterback, so last year's environment may have been friendlier to Dickey than this year's will be, even in the small sample size where we saw Will Hammond starting for Texas Tech last year. Dickey's production looked touchdown driven. He had one game of 12 carries, 54 yards, and a touchdown, and then the other game where Will Hammond started, 8 carries, 10 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And that is the kind of line that looks fine on the surface, but is being held up by touchdowns. And touchdowns are exactly what become less stable once a mobile quarterback gets involved. And Brendan Sorsby is just that. And if the rushing volume is split more ways and the TD chances drop, Dickey starts looking like an overpriced running back 9. He can still be useful, but running back 9 is asking you to ignore too many warning signs between Williams, Joyner, and the mobile QB in Brendan Sorsby. This looks more like a back being drafted at supreme ceiling other than value. Are we on the same page here, Nate, with the Texas Tech running back room? or are you all in on Cameron Dickey being that guy and being drafted as a top 10 running back?
No, I think for the most part, I'm with you. I think taking him in the top 10 is steep for me. I am a believer in Cam Dickey. I do think that he will end up being the top running back for Texas Tech this year.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, like taking him in the top 10 is almost like saying, is really just, man, we're really early in this, and I'm gonna take a guy that had 1,300 yards and 16 touchdowns last year. You know what I mean? Like I'm just gonna take somebody that was super productive last year. It kind of feels like where is what's happening when he's being drafted. It's not really taking into account a lot of those changes, like you mentioned, Joyner and Sorsby taking place. There's a lot more variables there at Texas Tech now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I would still anticipate that he's the top guy, but what that looks like, I don't know, man. It's really hard to assume that he's going to produce like he did last year. But taking him in the top 10 is essentially saying he's going to repeat, and that's tough.
Yeah, I agree. Let's play a little bit of who would you rather with Cameron Dickey, Nate. Cameron Dickey, who would you rather draft, Cameron Dickey or Will Henderson?
I think I would take Will Henderson.
All right.
Yeah.
Cameron Dickey or let's go with Lucky Sutton, San Diego State running back.
Oh, Lucky Sutton, easy. Lucky Sutton's in my top 10.
Oh, there you go. Cam Dickey or let's go Aeneas Williams.
Ooh, so Williams is actually somebody that I'm gonna bring up later in this episode. So you're kind of tugging on a little bit of my heartstrings right there. I would say it's close because Dickey has shown what he's capable of, and we haven't seen that from Aeneas Williams. But yeah, that one's super tight. But I would I don't know. I might still take Dickey in that situation, just knowing what. Yeah, that's real close though.
It's a tough one, yeah. So and Will Henderson being drafted as RB15, again Cameron Dickey RB9. So, you're getting value there if you're deciding to go with Will Henderson over Cameron Dickey. Lucky Sutton, RB17, Cameron Dickey, RB9. Again, that's the value that we're trying to pinpoint with this early ADP. And then Aeneas Williams being drafted as RB27 currently. I'll give you one more: Cam Dickey or Joe Jackson, running back out of Kansas State.
I think I'd probably take Joe Jackson. Yeah. I mean, let me ask you this. This is another room that's similar in this kind of situation where I think that a particular running back is being drafted as though the room is settled, and I'm not convinced that that's the case. And it kind of combines the last 2 points that we've talked about, because this is another situation where a coach is hired at Penn State.
Yeah.
And he brings so many of his players from his former program, Iowa State, and it's a little bit of a step up, even though they're both in the P4. Carson Hansen, I notice, is being drafted as RB35 right now, 79th pick overall. What are your thoughts on that backfield? Because I kind of have some strong opinions about it, and I don't know how comfortable I would be just assuming that he's for sure the guy.
Yeah, so one of the trends I found with Carson Hansen was if he didn't get a certain amount of carries, if he didn't hit a carry threshold, his fantasy production was really limited. So he'd have to see that at Penn State in order to be useful. And they brought in James Peoples. They got Quentin Martin there, 2 guys that, haven't really done much with their time at the college level, but there's still opportunity there for them to cut into Carson Hansen's usage. And then if Carson Hansen doesn't see the touchdown totals either, I think that he could take a hit with his fantasy production. So he's not a running back that is going to do a lot with a little. He needs a lot of touches in order to be productive. And at least right now, I'm okay taking him. I think his ADP, if I'm looking at this here, is RB
He's RB
35.
35.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm okay if I go running back heavy at the start of my draft. I'm okay maybe taking Carson Hansen as my running back 4 or 5 because if playing best ball, he could see those games where he ends up being a top end a player at the position, but he's not a player that I'm gonna have a lot of trust into. If I go wide receiver heavy and he's my RB 1 or 2, I might get a little bit nervous with his weekly production. But where do you sit? I'd love to hear where you sit on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that you described him as somebody that needs a lot of carries in
Yeah.
order to be productive is because he's not very good. Like he
Yeah,
needs a lot of
exactly.
carries because
Yeah.
he doesn't do much with the carries that he gets.
Yep.
No, I don't know. I find it interesting. Like I didn't think he was very good at Iowa State. Like if you look at the metrics, like Abu Sama, who I don't think's anything special. I mean, basically was better than him at just about every metric that you look at, as far as yards per carries, his missed tackle forced rate, his yards after contact per attempt, his breakaway percentage. Like these are all things that Carson Hansen was not good at. And yeah, I mean, if he does get volume, like you're basically, yeah, I mean, I think if you're drafting him in the top 36 running backs, so basically saying he's your RB 3 on your roster, you're basically assuming this is somebody that's going to get 200 to 250 carries
Yeah.
in order for that to work because he is so touchdown dependent. And I don't know. And I'm not saying that Peoples is great, and I certainly don't think Martin's a third year running back now. He hasn't done anything through
Nope.
2 years.
Yep.
But I mean, Peoples is at least he's been just as productive on a per carry basis as Hansen, and he's done it in the Big Ten, which is where Hansen's moving up to. So I don't know. I found that interesting. Carson Hansen's still being drafted like he's good, and I don't think he's any good.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. He's gonna need a lot for him to go his way in order to be productive. And like I just I just don't like. I'm with you. I don't see him getting the volume. Jared's kind of on the other side of that. He was like he thinks that because he's following the coaching staff and it's his senior year, they might just force feed him the ball in order to just maybe increase his draft stock or kind of set him up in for something at Penn State. But I'm on the other fence of that. I'm just kind of neutral with where I'm at with Carson Hansen. I'm not gonna overdraft him. I'll take him if the value's there, but I'm with you. I don't think he's an asset that I want to have as my running back 1 or 2 or even 3 at this point.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, let's get into one trend we are buying and one trend we aren't buying. And one trend I am buying is I'm buying in early drafts, sitting on the quarterback position and just letting the board come to me because there's just too much value sitting in the middle and later rounds at quarterback. You don't have to force the position early. You can set yourself up with an anchor quarterback in the early rounds if the right one falls to you. Then sit on the position for a stretch when you build strength at running back and wide receiver. And that is where the value starts to show up, is in those middle rounds. Carlos Del Rio Wilson is going in the 11th. Lenore Sellers and Caden Creel both going in the 12th. Haas Haney going in the 17th. Roman Gagliano in the 18th. Skylar Locklear in the 23rd. There's a lot of affordable quarterback upside sitting well after the premium rounds, and it gives you room to load up on top end talent at the other positions first, then you building up your quarterback room later without feeling like you sacrificed ceiling. Nate, you with me on that one? Are you with the trend of, it seems like especially this year, there was some of it last year, but especially this year, the trend of just letting your opponents take these early round quarterbacks and then you just scooping up these mobile point producing quarterbacks in the middle rounds.
Yeah, like I already mentioned, I think QB is just so stacked this year that
Yeah.
you kind of you have nothing to lose really by waiting. And I'm usually hey, I don't leave a draft without a really strong QB. I draft when it comes to best balls, I draft more QBs than anybody else in the draft. I want a super strong QB room, but
Sure.
this year does feel a little bit different. Just looking at the ADP and like when we're going to talk about later on, guys that we think are really good values and late round values. I had a hard time not just listing a bunch of these quarterbacks because so many of them I would be very comfortable with as like my QB3 that I could literally get, after the 20th round. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of that this year. I definitely agree with just letting the draft come to you whenever it comes to QB and taking some shots later on after you've got a guy or two that you really like.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a trend with this early ADP, Nate, that you're buying or you're not buying?
Well, I think it's kind of it's correlated to the QB situation, and I think one that I'm buying is a lot of these, these running backs are being. I mean, there's 14 running backs going in the first 21 picks of ADP.
Yep.
And I get it. I get it because, and especially when it comes to P4 drafts, once you get, into the teens, um, the running back situation is really a crapshoot, and it's there's a lot of really solid options because of all the players that are coming back. And, last year was just a really good year for a lot of sophomores, like Lacey and Hardy and Antoine Raymond and guys like that. But um, I think QB is loaded, but you still have to really invest in that position. Try to get your starters and, even your QB 3 and 4 in those first 5, 6, 7 rounds
Yep.
to feel good about what that room is going to look like come round 15 to 20.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, sitting on QB seems to be the way to do it. But I mean, I would love to see what your most recent QB's rooms look like, just so I can get a marker of maybe what our QB room should look like. Because with college fantasy football, quarterbacks. I mean, if you nail the quarterback position, and you're playing best ball, you can get guys that are putting up 26 to 30 points on a weekly basis, and that's the kind of stuff that's going to help you take down your leagues. Is there a trend, Nate, that you're maybe not buying this early? I know it's kind of hard to pinpoint one because where we're drafting, running back being the trend right now to draft early, quarterbacks, you want to sit on late. Is there maybe a trend we're not overly investing in right away?
I mean, just looking at ADP, I mean, it looks like there are looks like 18 wide receivers going in the top 50 picks overall. And I'm kind of the thought, like, I think there's a handful of wide receivers that deserve to go really high. Those Jeremiah Smiths and the Malachi Tonys and Messers and Sparks. That whole group, I think, deserve to go in those first round to second round range. After that, because there's such a drop and you're basically investing your draft capital in somebody that's either unproven or there's some kind of change in the system or whatever the case may be. I honestly, I don't know that I would force myself to take, some receivers in that round 3 to 6 range. Like I might just kind of keep stocking up on some running backs at that point.
Yep.
And then take some guys in that round 7, 8, 9, 10 range at wide receiver. So I think that's kind of where I'm at. Like if people watching this episode are looking at this ADP draft board, there's a whole group of wide receivers in that green and yellow range that I don't know how confident I would be in them, and I might just kind of wait until some of these guys that are going, after wide receiver, 20 to 25, like somewhere in that range. I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, and another trend is sitting on the tight end position. I feel like there's an advantage there if you want to build a solid tight end room with really there's only 2 tight ends going in the top 100 picks with Trades Green and Terrence Carter, you can really do some damage at the tight end position if that's the way you want it to go and you wanted to shore up your tight end room and really take over that positional group in your league based on where these guys are falling. I mean, there's still a lot of unanswered questions. We've already touched on Dorian Thomas. What's it going to be with J.J. Buchanan and Hogan Hansen at Michigan? Benjamin Brahmer going to Penn State, moving on from Iowa State. Garrett Oakley and Lincoln Cure. What's that dynamic going to be? And you're moving into guys like Juice Farine and Pat Overmeyer, who transferred, who have the potential to be really valuable in PPR or tight end premium formats. So I think that's kind of a trend where, if you wanted to take advantage of a positional group, you could really do it at tight end.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It goes along with some of the things we've been saying. If you wanted to go up and reach for a couple of those tight ends and kind of lock down that room and feel like you've got an advantage over your league mates, by getting a couple of those first 5 that you see up there: Trades Green, Terrence Carter, Jamari Johnson, DJ Benami, and Dylan Wade. Like, you get 2 or 3 of those guys in your roster early on, and because you punted, let's say, on some of those round 3 to 6 wide receivers,
Yeah.
just because you feel as good about round 7 to 10 wide receivers, then all of a sudden, you're pretty stacked at tight end, not having to worry about that position for till the mid-20s.
Yeah, the rest of the way. All right, Nate, let's get into our reaches and values. We're going to give you guys one reach that we've identified early, one late value, and one of our favorite values. Nate, you're the guest. I'll let you take the floor on this one. Give me your number one, or at least one reach that you've identified here with the early ADP.
Yeah, so I just don't know how much Miami's going to be able to support a second wide receiver. I get that Cooper Barkate is going with Darian Minsa. There's already a relationship built there.
Yep.
With Darian Minsa. However, drafting a second Miami wide receiver in the top 16 just really, really seems like a reach for me for a team that is consistently under Mario Cristobal a run first offense. They're going to be good again. They're going to be competing for playoff run. How much are they really going to be airing the ball out? Yeah, I mean, to support 2 top 16 wide receivers, I mean, this would be a team that would have to throw the ball 40 plus times a game. Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator there at Miami, has never really shown a propensity to feature a boundary wide receiver, which is what Barkate would be with Malachi Toney in the slot. So for me, I'm gonna have 0 Cooper Barkate if that's where he's going as a borderline, wide receiver 1. I mean, he's just a few notches back from somebody like Chris Don or something like that. Now, granted, a lot of guys in this same group, Jordan Dwyer, Cam Coleman, Tanook Hines, DeCorian Moore, like these are all guys that there's a ton of question marks, like how much, what's their ceiling and can they actually reach it? But for me, Cooper Barkate, wide receiver 16, I just think that's a big time reach. If you're comfortable taking Cooper Barkate, wide receiver 16, you sure as hell better be drafting Darian Minsa, as like a top 15 quarterback. As if he can support Toney, who we know is going to be really, really good, and Cooper Barkate, then buddy, Miami's going to be throwing it all over the field. They're going to look like Shannon Dawson's team back at Houston when he was coaching under Dana Holgorsen, and they were tossing it all over the place there.
Yeah, and that's a great point as well. If you're gonna think that the Miami is gonna produce these top pass catchers, yeah, you made a great point there with Darren Missler. You got to be taking him as a top 10 QB at that point. Malachi Tony's ADP is wide receiver 2 and 102 overall. He's either going to be, I've seen some drafts where he goes first as the 101, or he doesn't make it past 103. He goes either 102 or 103 in that spot. So the fact that 2 of the wide receivers, like you mentioned, are being drafted in the top 20, it's a little sketchy for the second wide receiver being picked in that spot. My maybe spicy pick here for a reach is Damon Williams, quarterback at Washington, only because I feel like QB8 is a bit of a reach because the asking price is asking for another jump from a player who was still more of a back end QB2 than a locked in QB1 on a per game basis. The upside is obvious here. He was close to 3,000 passing yards and 800 rushing yards just last year, and that is the kind of profile people want to chase. But the question is how much more of a jump he actually needs to make to pay off the QB8 price tag. Last year, he still finished as more of a back-end QB2 in fantasy points per game with just over 23. Even with the graduating QBs leaving the player pool, that does not automatically push him to that QB8 threshold. 8 QBs who finished ahead of him are now gone from college football, and he still would not have landed there just by default. So you're asking for real growth, not just natural turnover at the position. And if you're using last year's QB8 scoring pace as a benchmark, Damon Williams would need about 4 more points per game, and that's a meaningful bump. And the issue I have with Damon Williams is just the weekly volatility. 5 of his games were under 20 fantasy points last year, and 2 of those he scored just single-digit fantasy points, and that is just a lot of dead weight for a quarterback you are drafting this aggressively. To pay off for QB8, he basically has to eliminate most of those misses on a weekly basis, and the room for error is just really small at that cost. The potential's there, like I mentioned at the top, almost 3,000 passing yards, almost 800 rushing yards, but the ADP pricing is pricing again another kind of build what he broke out as last year, and it's not the risk that the volatility stays in that profile. So he again strong ceiling, but QB8 is asking you to draft the jump before he actually makes it, and at that price, I would want more consistency than what he showed last year because the margin of error is just too thin. Nate, are you high on Damon Williams? Are you okay drafting him as potentially your QB1, and you think QB8 is a decent price tag?
Yeah, I mean, buddy, you're talking to maybe the biggest Damon Williams fan that there is out there. So sorry, Chris, but
no, don't be sorry.
Yeah, and this is somebody that I did write about this spring, where I do think that there is a potential for the bottom potentially falling out for him.
Yeah.
I don't think all the offseason turmoil has been great for him. The thing that concerns me most, like they lose Denzel Boston. I don't see a replacement for him on this team.
It's a big one.
They lost a couple other wide receivers that weren't bad. And I question how good that wide receiver room really is. I do love the fact that, I mean, he's with Jed Fish, who's proven to be very good. They're bringing back a bunch of experience on the offensive line. This should be the best offensive line that Washington has had in a while, I guess since their national championship run. But yeah, I mean, I liked him on a lot. I'll be honest. This is probably the ceiling for me. Like I could not take him any higher than QB8 because it is such a loaded QB pool this year. So there's some guys that I would probably take ahead of him that are going behind him. But then there's some guys again like Drew Mestamaker. honestly, I'm not totally sold on Arch Manning. Like there are some guys that are actually being taken ahead of him that I would probably be more comfortable with Damon Williams.
That's fair.
But yeah, I mean, I think some guys that are kind of going in that range, like let's talk about Sam Levitt for a second. Like obviously he's in a great situation moving over to LSU, and we know how good Lane Kiffin quarterbacks can be. But at the same time, like he's not going to practice this spring. How concerning is the foot surgery that he had? Is that going to be an issue? He is moving to a new system, whereas Damon Williams is staying in the same system. So, there's just some guys kind of around in that range. Um, I don't know. I'm pretty comfortable with Damon right around QB8. He's probably, if I were to do rankings today, he'd be somewhere in my like QB7 to 10 range. I think is where I'd probably have him.
Yeah, and he's going to give you those games where he's a star and he puts up
Yeah,
28 to 30 points. He's also has the potential to give you those games where he's not the star and he's
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 yeah, like he's somebody that I've also kind of mentioned before. Like when he travels west of the Rocky Mountains, and it sounds strange, but like when you're playing in Seattle and you have to travel to New Jersey and Pennsylvania and places like that, and like that's a lot of travel, and it's in the Big Ten. The conditions are different, and the defenses are better and stuff like that. He's actually one of those guys where for season long leagues where you actually start and sit players, he's actually more beneficial than he is in best ball because you kind of know when Damon's going to go
when
off.
he's
When they
gonna
play
yeah
bad teams
yep that's a fair
or when
point.
they play at home or on the West Coast, like he goes off. When they travel or they play good teams, that's not going to
That's
be good for him,
bench
you know.
territory.
He gets sacked. He gets sacked way too often against decent teams.
Yeah, and his rushing profile might get better, like we touched on with Dampier, because of the uncertainty in the wide receiver room, running back room as well. Jonah Coleman has moved on. Adam Muhammad has moved on. Um, we don't quite know what we're walking into with the positional players at Washington. So there is potential there where he does live up to the value of QB8. I'm a known Sam Levitt hater, so I'm definitely probably take Demond Williams over Levitt. But there's some other guys that I think will give me more consistent output than Demond Williams going into the year. So at least for right now, Demond Williams at QB8 is just a bit of a reach. You got a favorite value? One of your favorite values of the draft or the
Yeah,
ADP?
dude. Looking at this, Chris, man, there's some guys that I like a lot. I tried to stay away from some of the quarterbacks just because there's some guys that like Jackson Arnold at QB 35. Love that with him hooking up with Dan Mullen over there and dropping down to the G5.
Yeah.
I love Braxton Woodson at QB 41. I liked what I saw from him when he filled in at times at Navy, and they're going to be running that same system again. He's experienced, even though he's never really started a full season. So, but again, I'm gonna stay away from the quarterbacks. I have two running backs.
Ooh.
One we touched on earlier with Aeneas Williams
Yep.
over at Notre Dame. I think him going RB27 is a little low for me, just based off what we've seen from Notre Dame, what we've seen from Mike Denbrock. And that offensive line is just always good, man. It's and they 8 out of the 12 teams on their schedule are just going to be pushovers that Notre Dame's going to beat up on, and he's going to get, he's going to get 15 to 18 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown and call it a day. Like I just think that's going to be a solid move at RB27. But this is what I want to talk about, Chris. This is my top value, and I tweeted this out
Let's hear it.
to Jared the other day. Looking all the way down here at RB, let me find him. RB 47
Ooh,
is Ja'Cory Lewis over at
great
Appalachian
call.
State.
Great call.
He was a true freshman last year. He actually performed very well with some of the hitting a lot of freshman milestones that we want to see that tend to turn into really strong both college and NFL value later on. He hit a lot of those milestones and a lot of those markers. He took over for Rashad Dubinion, who was the clear RB1 at the beginning of the season. I mean, Dubinion was getting a good 20, 25 touches each game. And while Lewis wasn't like super efficient, he was still incredible towards the end of the season. He had, I don't have the numbers right in front of me right now. I probably should have looked these up before we started talking about it. But he had, I want to say, the second or third most touches in the entire country over his last 3 games, only behind Hawkins and Dickens over at Liberty.
Yep.
In his last 3 games, because Appalachian State made the switch to him, and that is a system and a staff that loves to feed one guy, and he absolutely blew up towards the end of the year because of it. He showed he's actually a pretty good receiving back as well too. He was very involved in the pass game. Here we go. I got the last three games for the listeners here. Against Marshall, 33 carries, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, had 6 targets, 5 receptions, 39 yards. Arkansas State the next week, last regular season game, 22 rushes, 108 yards, 4 targets with 4 receptions, and 21 yards. And then in the bowl game, he had 16 carries, 55 yards. Not a great bowl game, but he also had 5 targets, turned them into 5 catches for 35 yards. I mean, this is a guy that was averaging over 28 touches his last 3 games. So if I can get that at RB 47, I'm usually pretty happy because to quote Volume Pigs, I mean, that's what we want. We want somebody that's going to get 25 plus touches a game. We love that.
Yeah, and that's tremendous value at running back 47. Tremendous value that you're going to be able to get that potential usage out of that backfield that late in your drafts to fill out your running back rooms. That's tremendous. I love the call there with Shakari Lewis. Now, you didn't want to touch on the quarterbacks, but I want to touch on a quarterback because I just can't stop drafting Roman Gagliano late, and his ADP right now is quarterback 43, and it's exactly the kind of value that makes waiting on quarterbacks so appealing. This is the kind of quarterback you want when you sit on the position. When Gagliano was active, he averaged 30.21 fantasy points per game, and I believe through that 3-week span, it was good enough for a top 10 producing quarterback in fantasy points per game. Quarterback 7 exactly. So the upside at cost is obvious. The dual threat profile is there, in his limited role as the starting quarterback for Middle Tennessee last year. 30 rush attempts, averaged 8.3 yards per carry, and scored 2 rushing touchdowns. He also showed efficiency as a passer, 120 pass attempts. He threw for 906 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. And that was only in a 3-game span. I mean, that is very strong efficiency base for a quarterback that is going this late. He has the kind of value, he has the kind of profile that can turn into league-winning value. The appeals there has been a coaching change at Middle Tennessee with Anthony Skelfel coming in from Southeastern Louisiana. But during his time there as the offensive coordinator, 2024 and 2025, the quarterback position averaged 358 pass attempts and 96 rush attempts throughout the season. Those are not massive numbers, but they do give you a workable foundation. The expectation should be that Skelfel is willing to use the quarterback through both through the air and on the ground, and that keeps the path open for Gagliano to smash his ADP if he holds the job. At quarterback 43, Gagliano does not need to be perfect to pay off. The profile already shows real dual threat upside, and the new coaching staff does not look like a bad fit for that skill set, he is one of the better late round quarterback values on the board, and could be that quarterback like Byron Brown was last year that we were able to draft at a tremendous value and end up giving you top 10 quarterback one production this year, Nate. So Roman Gagliano is a quarterback that I think I have in every draft I've been a part of this offseason, man.
Yeah, I mean, QB 43, what great value. And just like it's kind of interesting, we both picked these two very specific players that blew up their last 3 games of the year, right? Ja'Cory Lewis was awesome his last 3 games. Gagliano was awesome his last 3. But I mean, the staff clearly made the switch, and those players produced whenever that switch happened. So yeah, I think that's really good value. I don't know much about this OC that comes over from Southeast Louisiana. But the fact that he uses his quarterback to run the ball in his previous job, like I think that bodes well for Gagliano, who's got a little bit of dual threat in him. So yeah, I think that's a great call. I was trying to see, I assume Middle Tennessee did not make any they didn't add any quarterbacks from the transfer portal, did they?
I don't
was curious
believe
what
they
his
did.
competition is.
Don't think they did. I know Vattiato is out of the picture.
Yeah, I've got their roster pulled up here. Just looking at the other guys on. I have not heard of any of these.
Yeah, I don't think there was anyone, at least. Like, there was no big FCS transfer in.
Yeah, I think everybody on the roster is just guys that were already there, or just new freshmen that they brought in. I did not see any new transfers, so it looks like he's going to have that job pretty locked up. And yeah, I mean, great value at QB 43.
Yep. All right, one more before we wrap this up. Do you have a late round ADP value that you want to pinpoint early here, Nate?
Yeah, so digging a little bit deeper. I don't know that my guy's as late as your guy is, but I like the hire that Colorado State made in getting Jim Mora from Connecticut, and he's bringing, so his offensive coordinator at Connecticut went to TCU, but he is still bringing a lot of pieces from that offense. He's bringing his pass game coordinator, his QB coach, and all that comes with him to Colorado State. Who's also joining him at Colorado State is the guy that's being drafted RB 66 overall, and that's Darrell Robinson.
Yeah.
He obviously was with Jim Mora at UConn 2 years ago and was very productive there. Now, he didn't have a huge workload at that time. They kind of split things between Edwards and I want to say Mel Brown got some carries. And but Darrell Robinson was very effective. Darrell Robinson thought he could, like many people, could move up to the SEC and be effective. He didn't even really touch the field hardly at all at Auburn last year. Drops back down to the G5. I think that's a system that can be one of these just kind of lock and load and ready to go and hit the ground running there at Colorado State. A little concerned that with Haas Haney being the expected QB1 there, that maybe he kind of steals some goal line touches from him and kind of vultures some TDs. But still, Darrell Robinson's somebody that that a lot of P4 programs were very interested in. I think the talent outweighs a lot of who his competition will be, and can be very effective and produce like a top like a top 36 kind of running back that you're getting, a good 10 rounds later than that.
Yeah, I love that call. I know Jared is high on Darrell Robinson as well at Colorado State. So you got another person in your corner for that call. But there's big potential for him there under Jim Mora again. and the value you're going to be able to draft a running back like that. Like he's one of those perfect candidates if you decide to go maybe a little wide receiver heavy at the top of your draft and you kind of push running back down a little bit because of the value you're going to be able to get a running back like Darrell Robinson at. He's one of those perfect candidates that, if he ends up as your running back 3 or 4 because of the potential in that offense that he has, it could pay off handsomely for you. So love the call of Darrell Robinson there, Nate. And then one of my favorite late round values is Isaiah Hunter at Nebraska, being drafted as wide receiver 100. It's a cheap for a wide receiver tied to a quarterback who's willing to push the ball downfield. Calandria, that's in Anthony Calandria. Calandria is coming off career highs in passing yards, touchdowns, and yards per attempt. He also finished top 10 in deep pass attempts and deep pass yardage on throws over 20 yards, and that matters for Hunter's profile quite a bit. He's already showed that he can work downfield. 15.6% of his targets came on deep throws last year. He averaged 27.7 yards per catch on those looks. His best work also showed up in the intermediate area of the field with 31.3% of his target share coming between 10 and 20 yards last season. So and he turned that into 176 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's not just a pure low A-dot slot type living on easy touches. There's real field stretching and chunk play upside here with Calandria and Isaiah Hunter. It's a combination of quarterback and wide receiver that really fits well. On the throws over 20 yards last year, Calandria, 65 attempts, 1,046 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Nebraska bringing him in gives Hunter access to a much more aggressive downfield profile. At this price of wide receiver 100, you're betting on the connection and roll upside without really needing perfection. It's a wide receiver 100. It's the kind of late round swing that I want to make. And if Calandria keeps attacking vertically, Hunter has a real chance to turn that cheap ADP into one of the better wide receiver values on the board. Nate, are you buying into the Nebraska offense at all? And is it an Isaiah Hunter that you are pinpointing as the wide receiver to own in this room?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm necessarily like seeking out the offense. Like I definitely did that. Definitely did that a lot last year. I own a ton of Dane Key.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I am somebody that historically has always invested in Dana Holgorsen wide receivers. It was fruitful at Houston. It was fruitful at West Virginia, and at his time as OCs at Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, on and on and on and on. Like he is an incredible play caller in terms of how he utilizes wide receivers. So yes, I like this call. 100 is far too late. It is interesting that Shannon Dawson, who's a coaching offspring of Dana Holgorsen, his wide receiver 2 is going in the top 16, but Dana Holgorsen's expected wide receiver 1 is wide receiver 100 in our early ADP. Interesting how that plays out. 2 things I'll point out, like you're talking about in the deep ball. I think that's going to be a big time emphasis. Like so Nebraska is almost done with their spring. They were one of the earliest to start spring practices this year. And one thing that Holgorsen has repeatedly said is, I'm telling my wide receivers to stay active and break off and go deep on routes when Anthony Calandria moves outside the pocket. He's like, this is something we haven't done in the past. We are telling our wide receivers to be aware that when Calandria runs, the cornerbacks are going to get eyes on him, and you've got to take off, and there's going to be big plays because of that. So yeah, I think there's potential here with With Hunter, somebody that's going as wide receiver 120 is Quasi Gilmer, who
Yep.
transferred in from UCLA to Nebraska. He's gotten some really strong buzz this offseason there at Nebraska as well too. It sounds like these two are definitely going to be the top guys. And I would encourage people to definitely take some shots on one or both of them late in your drafts, because you have got a potential high-end producer if Holgerson's offense looks like it has in his second full year there at Nebraska, and Calandria maybe can open some things up by playing a little bit off script.
Yeah, great call, Gilmer, as well. Yeah, a lot of news coming out with Gilmer doing some great things at Nebraska. So definitely a situation that, you're rounding out your wide receiver room. It's two players that you're going to want to target as, your wide receiver 7 or 8, when you're drafting this early. So before we get out of here, Nate, what should early drafters, or how should early drafters be utilizing this early ADP?
I mean, if it's me, I mean, I'm taking this as an opportunity to just kind of see who I can get late, like some of these guys we've talked about that I think can that have the opportunity to be high end producers. And I'm also understanding that like the sample size for this early ADP is just so small right now,
Yeah,
right? Like it's
yeah,
only a handful of drafts. So don't look at this ADP as locked in stone like maybe you would an ADP come late July or early August, when there's been hundreds of data points that have been fed into what Jared and others are able to produce with the ADP, because that is a lot more consistent. So trends are going to change.
yep.
The more spring news comes out, the more people are going to shift and start to buy in on the new flavor of the month, and that will definitely change as time goes on. But yeah, just use this as just kind of a starting point, and be able to pick out some guys that maybe are going in those rounds, 15 to 20, that you think can produce, like some of these guys that are going in rounds 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, agreed. Do with it exactly what we just did with it. Pinpoint the good values, highlight the early reaches, and figure out where you can take advantage of your league mates who are maybe drafting some of these guys either too late or too early. That's pretty much your goal with this early ADP, and you can find this early ADP and a lot of other great content over at CampusToCanton.com. Make sure you sign up for one of the great tiers, and when you do, you use promo code NATTY, NATTY, to get 10% off of that tier. That's promo code NATTY. Nate, thank you for joining me on the show. I know I was kind of all over the place. That first little block that Jared nails every week is always going to get me until I do it. How much time? I think he's done it over 200 times. So I appreciate your patience with me, man. Thank you for coming on the show. The floor is yours. Let the people know where they can find you. Let them know where they can get your great content, and just let the people know, Nate.
Yeah, you guys can find me over at Twitter, at X, at CFF Nate. I will, as we start to get some spring news, I'll be a little bit more active there. Obviously, you can find my articles on CampusToCanton.com. I've already posted some of my stock up, stock down for before spring kicks off. Once we get some spring news, then I'll be able to put together some stock up and stock down reports on the post spring. So I do plan to have a few other interesting things come out here over the springtime, just since it's a little bit of a down season for us. And yeah, you guys can definitely check me out over there, and hopefully over the next few months you'll hear me occasionally here on some of these podcasts as a guest.
Yeah, love it. Love to have you. Thanks again. That's it for us. You can find me at FFChrisB. You can find Jared at CFF_Jared. You can find the show at Chasing the Natty. We'll see you next week. Ciao.